It's on. Okay. Uh, by way of introduction to today's talk, I would like to read a quotation from both Mr. Judge. This is his book of daily quotations, and also Mr. Crosby for this date, June 29th. And it says here, not a single good theosophic life is lost, but every one of us affects not only the immediate associates, but also projects into the great universal current and influence that has its weight in the destiny of the race. And that's from Mr. Judge's book of quotation for today. And then from Mr. Crosby's, he states here, in the great economy of law and nature, each being is exactly where he needs to be to eradicate defects. All the conditions are present for his growth. The only question lies with him. Will he take them as pain or as opportunities? If the latter, all is well. He is bound to conquer, whether the way be long or short. Couldn't find HPB's book of daily quotations. But the idea of cycles, that is one of the most important in the whole theosophical system, the idea of cycles, or the doctrine, not an idea, the doctrines of cycles. The existence of cyclic law in nature has received a partial recognition by science. In theosophy, the law of periodicity is recognized as the fundamental law of the cosmos, and one whose application is both visible is both visible and invisible, in the universe of being, as well as beingness. Science has come to the point where they recognize cycles as pretty much a period of time. However, you do have in the field of astronomy those individuals like Kant, Newton, Kepler, who can sense there's a more meaning to just a dry period of time. Astronomy, in terms of the West, is that particular science that deals with cycles. Pretty much, you have the sun cycle, you have the moon cycle, sidereal cycle. So it's established, pretty much that there is this universal cyclic law, but going beyond and behind just basic physics or the physical universe, you can point to those astronomers, Newton, again, Kepler, Kant, and then of late, and Einstein, and there are some who have mystic leanings. But let's just deal with what basically a cycle is. It's a return, a ring, but it doesn't necessarily comes back to the exact same point. It goes to a higher point, like a spiral. Okay? And that's what we're focusing on here. In the Christian Bible, in the beginning it says, well, let there be light. Okay, now that there, if you take that in a dry sense, literal sense, that there was darkness and there was nothing but void. And so now this let there be light is a beginning of a cycle. Common believers don't really go beyond that, let there be light. They just accept, okay, the light, and then what happens following the light. However, theosophical philosophy states that this is the incarnation, if you want to bring it, the let there be light, if it's referring to a large, very large theosophical cycle like a Manvantara, then it is the incarnation of life coming into manifestation in a universe. And that is like coming from a period of rest to a period of activity. And within this period of activity, one have called into beings of light, and these, or lords of light, and these lords of light, high beings, and whatever scripture one want to draw one's attention to. And from there, you have lesser beings, archangels, then angels, and all the way down to great men, personages who awaken into life again to carry on this process of evolution. For instance, involved in, or intertwined in the idea or the law of cycles is evolution, and why we're here. And evolution suggests or connotes perfection. Well, what are we evolving to? And what's the goal? You know, the drama, the unfoldment of the soul. So, implicit in all these thoughts, they're all interconnected. You have the law of karma involved in cycles, the law of reincarnation. But hopefully, some of this will come out. And just to show the vast range of subjects that cycles cover, I was just going through this index here that we have in the launch here, and looking at several, well, just the topic of cycles cover so much that it's such a super broad subject. But you know how Theosophy starts with universals. The idea here was to start with life itself, the great cycle of necessity of life coming forward for the evolution and unfoldment and the drama of the soul. And this is done periodically in cycles. Now, with that being said, without what I want to do is to move in Mr. Judge's Light on the Ocean of Theosophy, and the questions to answers. Cycles is chapter 14, and questions to answers. An amalgam of questions come about concerning cycles, and because the subject is so vast, what I've done is to select just a few questions that cover the broad range of cycles, and hopefully we can sort of like integrate these subtopics into the overall subject of cycles. So for that reason, what I've done is to copy we have cycles of incarnation, cycles of reincarnation, cycles of avatars, individual cycles, habits, cycles of sensation. We have cycles of darkness. We have cycles of historic characters. So that range it covers so much. So the attempt here is just to start at some point, just hop around, and then questions will come out. So Tunjai, right there on where is mark 187, that top page, what establishes the 24-hour cycle, including day and night. Could you read that?
What establishes the 24-hour cycle, including day and night? So far as the Earth is concerned, the 24-hour cycle is governed by the revolution of the Earth on its own axis, which, in its moving around the sun, presents to us the appearance of day and night. But so far as we are concerned, this cycle, as all others, is established by and in exact accordance with the needs of the beings who fall within the influence of the cycle. We should remember that in the beginning, the sun and all the planets belonging to the solar system established, through their relations and interrelations, an order of motion, or a certain rate of vibration, which is the key governing all motions. Take the 19-year cycle of the moon, spoken of by Mr. Judge, for illustration. Remembering that all occult cycles affecting the Earth are reckoned by the moon. There are 4 weeks and 13 lunar months. Now multiplying the 13 by 4 and the result by 19, we shall get a number that will add up to 7. So with the sun cycle of 28 years, multiplying the 4 by 13 and then by 28, we get an answer in which the total of the numerals also comes to 7. That same 7 repeats itself in almost all of the cycles.
Okay. relevant and related to that is the next reading. But before we go further, good morning, welcome.
Good morning, thank you.
Would you, does anybody have any thoughts, questions about this, the 24-hour cycle and the sevenfold that's coming out here that was brought out? If not, then you see the next question down, does the 7-year period in man's life have any particular significance? And there's that 7 coming in. So, I don't, what,
Reverend Grace.
what's it?
Reverend
Reverend
Grace.
Grace?
Yeah.
How you doing, Reverend Grace?
Just plain Grace is fine.
Okay, Grace. Would you, the last very, on page 187 down there, does the 7-year cycle, would you mind reading that? Or can
Be
you read?
happy to.
Okay.
Is that due to the fact of our sevenfold?
No. Well, okay, since it's so short, just go ahead and finish reading it since you started.
Is that due to the fact of our sevenfold nature? It is due to the fact that everything is sevenfold. That is why there are 7 rounds, 7 races, 7 sub-races, 7 days of the week, 7 colors, 7 sheets of the soul, etc.
And just keep on going.
Does the 7-year period in man's life have any particular significance? Yes. The first 7 years will give a determining inclination to the next 7. The next 7 years will have a determining influence on the 7 ahead, and so on. Then there is another significant cycle, the 9 cycle. Whenever we have passed the 5 and have certain things in motion, the next 4 will follow the same lines because 5 is the balance. So 9 makes the perfect number, as well as being the number of perfection. It is also the number of death, that is, when there is perfection in one direction, comes a destruction of that perfection, and the beginning of a new 9. The number 10 is called completion of perfection, because 7 and 3 make the 10. The 7 is the manifesting side of nature, the visible. The 3 are hidden, the Atma Buddhi Manas side, the spirit, the self, and the acquired wisdom, and the active creative potency of that wisdom. The 3 hidden and the 7 manifest applies in every direction, as with numbers, colors, and sounds, which have their correspondential meanings in all of life and manifestation.
Okay. So if we want to pause here for a second, anything jumps out at anybody right now? The whole subject is cycles, and as before you came in, it's so broad. So what the attempt here to do is just cover different aspects under the heading of cycles. And this chapter here, this reading comes from chapter 14, which deals with cycles. It comes from answers to questions on cycles from Mr. Judge's Ocean of Theosophy. Are you familiar with?
I have read it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. There you have it.
Just
Okay.
rereading it.
This is my first time seeing you, so that's why I asked the
That's
question.
my first time here.
Okay.
Thank you for admitting me being so late.
Oh, sure. So one sees here that involved in cycles, well, of course, numbers pop up, but then you have here colors, numbers, sounds, and all that. So it shows you how complex, again, this subject is similar to if one was to look at a certain color, then immediately associated with that color is a certain sound and a certain number. And this is what the sages and the adepts have done throughout the years to code their messages and information that was not just readily available. It was available to the public, but yet still one had to be qualified or initiated into that system of thought. And because of that, we have so many misinterpretations and so many little add-ons or pop-ups of different thoughts. But again, the idea here is try to present the doctrine as clearly as possible and as pure as possible. Yes, yeah.
I have a question about the 7 and the 10. And in the reading, it says the number 10 is called the completion of perfection because 7 and 3 makes the 10. The 7 is the manifesting side of nature, the visible. the three are hidden: Atma, Buddhi, Manas. The spirit, the self, and the acquired wisdom, and the active creative potency of that wisdom. Now, I just had a. So the three hidden that's being referred to here, is it Atma, Buddhi, and Manas? Well, what are the seven? Because I thought part of the seven included Atma, Buddhi, and Manas. Since the seven is an outward manifestation of nature, so I'm a little confused. Can you clarify that for me, please?
These, as this student understands it, they're here. Man is a sevenfold being, but they're not fully in. Like throughout the literature, they say Manas is not completely incarnated in man. Man is representative of the sevenfold, just like nature, or like the days of the week. You see 7 days of the week, all right? So man as a being has a sevenfold nature, even though it's not fully incarnated within the man. And that's why you say because of the absence of Manas, we have so many gaps and so many mysteries as to what we are, who we are. But there's a germ, and then Buddhi, which is intuition, or the acquired wisdom. That expression right there, acquired wisdom, would be that's a growth, a development. So, and then spirit, of course, and I guess when the cycle does evolve around when we're ready, or when humanity is ready for that, then it wouldn't be hidden, so to speak. It would be like on Venus. They say they have already reached their seventh round. That they're really shining compared to Earth life, in other words. So that's just some response to your thought to be worked out later on. So yes, ma'am.
Of the seven, how do you break that down? What comprises that?
The sevenfold nature.
Yes.
What comprises the sevenfold nature? Well, if you start from the top, you have spirit. Okay, and then from spirit you have Buddhi. Buddhi would be that acquired wisdom again. And then there's Manas. There's a distinction between Buddhi and Manas now. Manas would broadly be mind. Okay, and then coming down from mind, one has what's that? Astral. However way you want to. Let me see. No, astral. Well, desire. Let's say desire. Creative force and impulse. Well, that would be prana, energy, since you have creative energy. So you have, let's say desire coming down from mind, below mind, and then from below mind, let's say astral, and then you have prana, jiva, however you want to look at it. Jiva, prana is like an individualization of jiva, and then you have body. Is that seven? Is that seven?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the breakdown and how everything within nature, in this huge cycle of universal manifestation, 7 seems to be the number. That's why people, you can win or lose in dice on 7 days of the week, 7 lords of light, 7 elites, lords of leaping. Yes?
Well, the 7 issue raises a question that another student and I have discussed in terms of this number 10. This thing mentions the number 10. It's called the completion of perfection. May I finish? Now, what I understood was that the 7 components, as a student, described, that is the physical manifestation in terms of, but it doesn't answer the question of the 10. It doesn't answer the question of the other 3 that are hidden. Now, I'm not sure what to call those 3.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to discern from what was stated in the passage about Atma, Buddhi, Manas, if that was to be considered the 3 that are hidden, from reading this very quickly. It says the spirit, the self, and wisdom. Um, and so I got a little confused in terms of being able to identify
So
those other three in addition to the seven.
seven, yeah. Now,
So the seven being starting from the bottom, physical, the astral.
you could go ahead. The energy principle you're leaving out there.
I haven't got the energy principle.
What
yet.
you say?
I'm doing it in my order. If you
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, if you want to start,
No, go ahead.
if you want to start
Just
really at the
continue.
bottom, you start
go
with
ahead.
elementals.
No,
Okay.
Fear, you don't have to go that far.
All right, fine. So the physical plane, the astral plane. Then you're gonna have your life principle, whatever you want to call that, prana, jiva, or whatever. Then you're gonna have your desires and emotions. All right. Then you're gonna have manas, mind, and then you're gonna have buddhi, which is the spiritual soul or the area of discernment and wisdom. And then you're going to have Atman, which is the spirit. Now, it's my understanding from reading Oceans and HPB is that though that Atman, that spirit, really is composed, is really, those different elements constitute that one thing, Atman. That it runs through the whole thing. It is it.
Right.
All right. It is spirit, but it's on different
Aspects.
planes, different levels. That's seven. And that's the number seven number. And I understand that number. Now, the question I'm really trying to get at here is, well, what represents the other three? Because it seems from this passage.
All right, okay. I get what you're saying.
Okay.
You know, basically your question is, well, from this student's
I
perspective.
already asked that. I just like to get an answer.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not fully qualified right now to go into detail on.
I understand. That's why I said this raises a question that I've been discussing very tangentially with another student. Now, he may want to chime in on it, but I'm just trying to clear this up in my own mind.
Okay. Well, for purposes of time, also, since we're dealing with numbers there, but yet we're dealing with principles also. In some of the books, the literature speaks about, you know, just like you got the unmanifested logos and you got the manifested logos. Okay, you got that which doesn't manifest. What manifests is the seven. Okay, that's why the universe, as I say, breaks down to seven. Okay, but what stays behind invisible or the noumenal, that's in the noumenal world or in the world of spirit, it seems to be those three. Okay. For right now, we can leave it for questions later, but I want to move on and deal with cycles instead of numbers per se right now. Okay, can we get back to that probably at the end of the discussion or presentation? All right. So, Barbara, could you let me see? We've turned the page to the 190. What it says here, you see what the little asterisk is? Yeah. Did you mind reading that?
Most of us are under the necessity of reincarnating, but the great beings who come to us incarnate of their own choice. What determines the cycle of their appearance? If the spiritually perfected men who come as divine incarnations at different periods of the world's history do not have to come, yet there must be conditions on earth that draw them here. The nature of the egos on the earth at any given time is what brings about the appearance of a great being. Then, too, such beings appear at the intersections of great cycles as occurred between 1875 and 1898 when three great cycles intersected. The first 5,000-year period of, how do you pronounce that? Kali Yuga, which began at the death of Krishna, the teacher of the Bhagavad Gita, was completed in this time. The 100-year cycle, when in the last 25 years of every century, an effort is made by the Great Lodge through teachers or their disciples to place better ideas before mankind, was also in operation. The sun during this period passed from Pisces into Aquarius, and there too was a sign. The intersection of these three cycles then meant several things, but one signification was that in or about that period, a great personage would appear on the earth with such knowledge as the civilization and the mind of the time would allow. If we want to know who that being was, we have only to think along the lines of our studies. The being known to the world as H.P. Blavatsky was known to the masters by quite another name, as they stated, and the knowledge put forward by her or by him is what we know as theosophy.
Okay, so there again, this brings up the other aspects of the cycles, like the cycles of avatars and the great beings who come periodically to assist and help elevate the race. It's their duty, those who have chosen to come back, to return instead of going farther or further into nirvana, etc., etc. Do you have any questions, Barbara, or anything as a result of the reading?
What were the three great cycles that were intersected? It said when three great cycles intersected. What?
Well, you could be talking about this. Right now, I really have to go back and think on that. But maybe you could talk about the 100-year cycle. Where exactly in that when you say the three great cycles? The 5,000.
Yeah, right underneath.
Okay, it could be the 5,000-year cycle, the 100-year cycle, because you said here, the latter part of every century, an impulse is made, an effort is made by the Lord to project the teachings among mankind. So that could be that cycle again. It says here, then two such beings appear at the intersection of great cycles as occurred between 75 and 1898. Okay, you have HBB coming on the scene with the production of Isis Unveiled. She starts there. Okay, Theosophy is projected publicly, for the time, and then between 1898, well, it could be. Notice I say could be. They're like radiation, scientific stuff is popping out in that time too, with Madame Curie and these people. The visible world is being shattered per se, so there could be a scientific cycle. And then it says the first 5,000-year period of Kali Yuga began with the death of Krishna. Okay, so just counting back. That's just somewhat of it, not to be absolute and complete in my answer to you right there. Okay.
There's another one mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
The sun moving from Pisces into the Aquarius.
That's right.
Also 2,500 years.
That's right. That would take that particular one, right? Forgot about the Aquarian. Pisces, is it Pisces or Aquarian? Aquarius. Oh, yeah. From the Piscean age to the Aquarian age. So astrological. So there's that intersection. And some of this goes into what happens. A cycle or the zodiac is basically like a clock. It only indicates what time something is supposed to happen. Just like at 3 o'clock, the school day is over, and then the zodiac only marks the time. It's not necessarily the cause of the event. Okay, so could we change over to the next page, 192? Veer, could you read the that where it's marked the why as the teachers of Jesus?
Given 191, excuse me.
Well, I don't have it. Do I have anything? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Why
Yeah.
was the work
Yeah.
again?
Okay, look. Yeah, Veer, 191, please.
Why was the work begun in this country in 1875? That's the question. Answer: because the cycle has brought again that which was before. Here among this people, the old Egyptians have come again, old Persians too, old Hindus, and those of other ancient nations you may find incarnated among us, if you know how. Lower down in the scale are those who, in previous incarnations, were the Red Indians of America. Their karma permits them to be reincarnated in the race which mistreated and supplanted them. In this country, too, is an aggregation of individuals from almost every country of the globe, so that a mixture of physical strains is going on which in time will produce a body of quite a different nature from any precedent physical bodies. At the same time, the psychic nature of these old peoples move forward, increasing in sensitiveness, and has its influence on the physical strain. Altogether, then, we have here a class of egos with a wider range of ability to understand and perceive than has existed in previous classes of egos. All these are considerations which bring back saviors, and they point to one thing which we ought and need to understand, that the one who began the work in this country is second to none. If we will study the teachings of that being and of that great lodge with this idea in mind, the better will be our understanding. The more we can understand from that point of view, the more we shall receive, the closer we shall reach to wisdom. The status of that being is one great lesson which an understanding of the law of cycles should teach us.
Okay. Any thoughts, comments, contributions on that? Comments, whatever?
That great being was a teacher for the 19th century. The teacher came and left, and the controversy as to who the teacher was is still going on today. That great being came and sacrificed her whole life to move the mind of the race forward. She came to the whole world, and she needs to receive our gratitude more than anything else.
This, what was just read, also gets into the idea about, worldly, just a tangential thought here about why was it started in this country, and then you have people flocking to America. On the southern border, you have people, kids coming in, and it speaks about in the theosophical literature how this is the formation of the next race. The next great race will be the Americas. I guess the soil, well, this mixing that was just read, and this new psychic and this new body is preparing the way for this new great race to take place. We're in a sub-race of this great sixth race that's unfolding, and keeping in mind that with every race there comes a principle more fully developed, and it's stated that what's the term? You will be able to look through matter. We already have ESP in common. Everybody has a little bit of that just to be able to communicate with one another. You got to have that ESP or that sensory perception, but the development of the sixth sense is coming into play. It's just like the sixth race. So, and America will be the land for that. And that's, Kim, could you read 192? Because we want to have time for questions. About why is the teaching of Jesus? Mm-hmm. Did you see that?
Yes. Why is it that the teachings of Jesus, which I can't really think of, why is it that the teaching of Jesus, which were to a limited people, receive so much consideration from these Western nations than the teachings of the Theosophy, which were written in black upon white with an appeal to all the world, inclusive? It is not a fitting karma that the now incarnated Egyptians who enslaved the Jews of old should be enslaved by the dogmas of the Jewish religion. For it is not the teachings of Jesus which are put generally into practice by so-called Christian peoples. The true teachings of Jesus were the teachings of Theosophy. Jesus taught the same things of Theosophy. Jesus taught the same things that Buddha taught some 600 years before him. He repeated the same teachings to a smaller people, to the Jews who were the mission, as he himself said. That mission spread to a people unprepared for knowledge, but prepared rather for all sorts of superstitions and dogmas. Jesus came in a lower cycle than that which brought Buddha. An age of mental and spiritual darkness was beginning, and instead of knowledge being given out, it had actually to be withdrawn from the ignorant class of egos then existing. Even in India, where much of this ancient knowledge was held and was a matter of record, it was maintained apart from the masses. This is why Jesus taught the multitudes in parables.
Okay. Any thoughts, comments, contributions about what was just read? It is, if one reads the life of Apollonius, it talks about Apollonius being a great adept who was on the scene as a witness on the scene. It mentions here about this age of mental and spiritual darkness was beginning. And you can see how the dark ages did fall upon Europe, where the church, rose. And it's just interesting that the dark ages coincide with the rise of the church, where they was talking about as ignorant as a pope. And philosophy was a state crime, and to be caught with a philosophical work in your home was really a death sentence. Yeah. So, beg pardon?
You were dead meat.
Yes, you were dead meat. So you can see where, again, it says knowledge had to be withheld also. And then that further explains why, and then if it was given out, it was coded and was symbolism. It wasn't just a clear reading of the dog jumped over the fence. But if you saw the dog jump over the fence, a sentence like that, they believed that every letter had a sound and a number and a color associated with it. And that's where, the alchemical symbols that evolved during that period and all that time, all this stuff had to be secret. And you can understand how great the resistance to HPB was when she comes about publicly to bring forth all that which was hidden, and she speaks, and then a woman too in the Western world, and the status of women over 100 years ago. So you can see the calumny and everything that was in the scorn that was tossed at her, to give some idea of how great this being really was, to do this, to bring all this that was hidden out publicly. All right. So, John, if there's no other thoughts on that particular reading, could you turn over to the last page then, where it's. I want you to read both of those because they sort of go. Just finish up. Start with, does ignorance of man change his evolution, and just going down.
Okay. Does the ignorance of man change his evolution, or does the law of cycles change his ignorance? The ignorance of the man keeps him ignorant. That is his evolution. If he wants to stay ignorant, no cycle and no person can change it. What are the cycles of destiny? All are cycles of destiny. Applied to ourselves, it is we who make our own destiny. We fix it for ourselves. The hole we fall into is the hole we dug. That is our destiny. Go on.
Yeah, keep going.
Will you explain something as to the application of this law of cycles in the formation and breaking of personal habits? Answer: the doctrine of cycles applies everywhere. There is not a single impression of any kind that we have that will not return. Not even a thought that we think that will not return. Not an act that we do that will not return. We're going through regular cycles all the time, self-established cycles. Now, the way to correct habits is to recognize that wrong thoughts will return, that even unwelcome thoughts are bound to return under law. So then set up an opposite thought, a thought of an opposite nature, or a feeling of an opposite kind, or start an act of an opposite kind. Keep on doing that as best you can, and finally you will destroy the old cycle and establish a new one. There are people who have the blues, their days of despondency. Mr. Judge once said, I have other things, but I never have the blues. Most people, however, do have them. The blues come on and seem to take complete possession of the person, but they can be cured if he will take the opportunity of establishing a different cycle. He must note the fact that they come at about a certain period, that usually a certain interval elapses between periods of blues. and knowing that they are coming, be prepared for them. Then he begins to think of the happiest day or the happiest moment or the happiest association he has ever had, and hangs on to that happiness as best he can. He won't succeed the first time, nor even the second time, perhaps, but if he keeps up the effort each time, he will find all the strength put into the previous efforts, until by and by, instead of the period of despondency, there will be a period of happiness. So it is by watching the return of impressions that we can correct these habits. Habits of any kind are instituted by repetitions. The first time we do a thing, it is not yet a habit, but we repeat the action and keep on repeating it, and finally it becomes automatic. With the knowledge of cycles, habits are within our intelligent control.
Okay. So that sums it up pretty much in terms of how vast the subject of cycles are, from solar systems to universe down to the individual and everything in between then. So that's one reason why this student chose to initially start with that and to come to this, bringing it down to the individual and showing how it can be applied, to oneself. Sometimes theosophy is accused of being too metaphysical or too abstruse or recondite for the average Joe on the street, or Budweiser Bob or Miller Mac. But one can see, as was stated in the literature, cycles are so self-evident that you can start with that point there and move out to other areas to show how cycles, and then with cycles comes reincarnation, then comes karma, and comes law, and therefore you got an end to present the doctrine, the theosophical doctrine. Are there any, yes sir, questions?
The last reading
Mm-hmm.
more than suggested it. I think it said that we have an influence on our own cycles, and I may be in a different cycle than another, and not only that, but we have an influence on the broader cycles and an influence on others who are in cycles. I mean, it just goes on and on.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the point I'm trying to make is, we as individuals have some degree of control here.
Mm.
And influence.
Yes. It's it's like we create our destiny, and it's good to know that. It's good to know that you have this return, and it's going to come, and you can be prepared for it if you desire it. Back to what I say, you got this. If a man chooses to remain ignorant, then that's his destiny. He goes no further. But it's the idea of you, the individual, making your choice at your time, not being coerced or proselytized from without. It has to come from within. It has to be that desire, first of all, because going back to the great desire first arose in it from a universal level, and that same desire is within, and it has to start there, no matter to what extent the influence may be externally. Yes?
That's interesting. Thank you. Herb his comments just triggered to something in my mind. That's why the CEOs, I call it, said, quote, "You are all gods," because God, as a God, that type of entity itself creates, puts out energy, which starts a domino effect. And it's fascinating if you talk to people, to realize, just to look around, even to look within oneself, to see just how much control we have over our own lives. It's just fascinating.
So that's a contribution, your comment. I mean, you're just contributing to the conversation. You don't have a question per se. You just
No,
okay.
just yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
So, when you started off talking about cycles, and when you ended up talking about cycles, it sounded like that some of these cycles are predetermined. some of the cycles are predetermined. That is, the cycles are going to operate whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
All right, that's one type of cycle. Now we ended up talking about another type of cycle, and that type of cycle is one that can start and stop depending on your thoughts and actions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more than just cycles. The cyclic law works more than just on a very broad level that is repetitive, like these major sun cycle and moon cycle and sidereal cycle that you mentioned. There's some cycles that come down to things that we create through our habits, through our thoughts and our actions, which then become habits. And then if we want to get rid of some of those habits, we can start a new cycle. In other words, we can change our thoughts, our words, and our actions, and a whole new cycle starts. So that's not predetermined. That's not going to happen every 25,000 years, 100 years, 5 years. That's going to happen when we put our minds to and our thoughts to making it happen.
True.
So those cycles work differently, maybe, when it comes to dealing with the Homo sapiens, the human beings, the soul that has the ability to effectuate cycles.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah, I would say pretty much you're in the right zone there. Once the cycle has started, you know, the only thing you can do is work with the cycle. And there was, to that very same question or thought that you presented there, something about that, but I just didn't copy that, didn't put that down. I was trying to, again, the broad aspect of cycles. But yeah, it shows you, right, in the human kingdom, whereas, I mean, in the other kingdoms, cycles are sort of fixed and cannot be changed per se, but when it comes to monos, these Homo sapiens that have mind, and you said thought and action, but you didn't include feelings also. That is an element too in that equation. Tunja, get your hand up.
I was just saying that the great cycles that we all talked about affect us, because we just talked about the sun cycle and moving from Pisces to Aquarius, for instance. In other words, the sun is occupying a different space, so what's around it affects it, and the sun affects our universe. So we're under its influence 24 hours. In The Secret Doctrine, HPB says the sun is the greatest magnet, that it draws from us as we draw from it. So even though we're in charge, so to speak, of our own evolutionary cycle, it is always in those greater cycles.
Right. So, if there are no more contents, I see we're on the hour. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for being here.